Hey there, welcome back to the show. I am so glad you're here today. It is February and I am so excited. I love this month. It is one of my favorite months, and I think I said that in November as well, because these are my two absolute faves, and there's a lot coming up, and I hope so far your year is going great. Some of us might need a restart, so consider this your permission to restart. Today, I am just going to briefly talk about simple dinners and meals that are easy if you are like me and you are currently being overwhelmed by the plethora of Pinterest recipe ideas and boards that you have created. Let's go. Welcome to Reps and Redemption. What would your life look like if you started to prioritize your health and your faith? Have you been up late at night Googling healthy grocery lists, upper body workouts, or quiet time with God ideas? Hey there, I'm Ashley Harvey, college athlete, Jesus follower, now wife, and stay-at-home mom of 3 daughters. In this podcast, you will be motivated to build your physical strength, increase in biblical wisdom, and utilize tactical health tips. If you're ready to be a part of a like-minded community of moms who want to be bold in their faith and live well, you're in the right place. Grab an iced coffee or a Celsius and head to the gym. Let's dive in. Do you ever get overwhelmed by all the options that you could create, and then, you've got to make the grocery list and prep for the week, and maybe you're not a meal prepper like me, and really, when you think about it, if you came to my house, I'm not necessarily a meal prepper. My husband will batch cook a couple proteins on the weekend. And actually, this past weekend, he only did like a couple packages of sausages. And we have some from some of the deer that he's hunted over the last year. And we try to keep it pretty simple. And, I think sometimes we need permission to be like, okay, it's okay. I don't need a board on Pinterest or on the internet filled with all these complicated recipes. And I think that is actually where I have found myself recently. I do not like to follow instructions when it gets a little complicated. I get overwhelmed. I have a 1 year old, a 5 year old, a 20-year old. They are all very close and we love spending time together. I personally don't want to cook a meal for more than 30 minutes. And I do love to keep my house tidy. I love to keep things together. I don't want a big mess. And then if I do, I want to clean it up soon after in the kitchen, that is. And what I have learned is when I overcomplicate things and I'm going through and I'm like, okay, what am I going to make for dinner this week? What can I do? I end up actually spending more because I buy things that I don't ever really use to make a specific recipe, and then I'm kind of stuck with all these extra ingredients that I might not touch again for months. And for one meal, and it took me 2 hours. And, maybe I learned something from it, maybe not. Maybe it was just delicious and we moved on. But I got to thinking, like, there's got to be an easier way to eat healthy. And I do think planning goes into it. So if there was something I had to say, and I've said this before, and I'm not going to make a bunch of bullet points or anything, but I think the first thing we can do to have healthier food on hand is to plan. And with a plan, basically you have a purpose, right? So you're going to say no to a lot of things that maybe you once purchased. For me, there's a couple of things that I used to purchase that I thought were borderline healthy and could pass as being healthy, and have since been enlightened to the fact that they were not. Thus, we will no longer be spending our hard earned, my husband's hard earned dollars on those items. And to make it a little bit more digestible, I think, since we're talking about food, before the internet, before things really, took off online and Pinterest and Instagram and all these things, yeah, it's okay to try some things and maybe I'll experiment on the weekend and, I made a keto cheesecake, no sugar cheesecake this past weekend for my husband, who was just finishing a autoimmune protocol. And it was good. It wasn't amazing. I overcooked it because I had never made a cheesecake but once in the 8 years we've been married. But, I spent a little bit on the cream cheese. I already had some baking items, and that was about it. So it wasn't very expensive to try, but it did take some time to make. But as far as I would say the internet and things being put online, before any of that happened, before I don't know if you remember this, the canned food craze. So basically, that was in my grandparents' generation where, they canned foods just became huge and collecting them and nothing wrong with them if you use them. I have some in my pantry myself, but that was kind of like a dump and go. And I would say before that, maybe when my grandmother was younger, and in that generation, I'm trying to think of what year that would have been, but it was mainly like how did they feed their families? Either pass down recipes that they knew how to make, or they would focus on the essentials, which was, a vegetable, a protein, and a carb. It's like potatoes. I kind of think it was a lot easier back then because we weren't trying to make something so complicated. And I do think once we get to that place where food has to be complicated or, a little laborious, that I think that's why I have said for years in the beginning of being married is I just really don't like cooking. But now, since I'm stepping into this new knowledge, this new life of living healthier and planning our health journey on purpose, being very purposeful with what I eat, with what my family eats, I'm actually in the last, I would say, 4 to 8 weeks, spending less and spending less time in the kitchen, but eating way more savory and satiating. And I think that if you don't like to plan or recipes kind of overwhelm you or you're just like, I don't know, I have some tips that might help. And I've said this before in making nutrition simple. I follow kind of, especially for the adults in the house. So it's my husband, myself, my 20-year-old bonus daughter, and then our 5-year-old and our 1-year-old. And what I try to do is straight down the plate is a line. So then on one side, on the left side, would be broccoli, a salad, very colorful, maybe some kale, bacon on there just to make it flavorful, but mostly veggies and peppers. We love peppers, raw and cooked. A bunch of different, think colorful veggies. And then you're going to put on the other side is, you're going to divide that line in half. So then half would be protein, 3 to 4 ounces. My husband generally eats 4 to 6. And then your complex carbs, if you eat them and enjoy them. Now, for example, my husband will eat some carbs, but it's definitely not simple carbs. It's complex carbs, which would be like a sweet potato or maybe some quinoa. But he prefers not to. He notices a difference in his body when he does. So his is usually half veggies, half greens, and half protein. So I try to stick to that rule of thumb, and it really has helped change the way that I look at recipes when I do look at old boards that I've created on Pinterest, or I try to make something like, oh, maybe I should make something different. And that's, like I said, I'll try something on the weekend or every other weekend, something new. But this has really simplified my life. So let me give you an example of what I'm doing this week. And I'll tell you where I got one of these ideas, but I I do love when we meal prep and batch cook a bunch of protein on the weekend, but sometimes it doesn't happen. And so this week I have in the fridge in a 9 by 13 pan a defrost dish. So it's all the protein I'm going to make this week that I am going to just throw in. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I might use the Instant Pot. I might use the crock pot. I might use the oven. I have a whole chicken. I have two 1 pound bags of ground beef. I have, what else else do I have? I have two other things in there. I'm just giving you an example. So some of it's frozen, some of it's already thawed out, like the whole chicken, which I will make in the Instapot today. And you can make these delicious and savory and wonderful to eat with olive oil, grass-fed butter, herbs, salt, more salt, Himalayan pink salt, extra pepper. And then I just got my first cast iron skillet. I am so excited. I used it this morning for breakfast and it was amazing. And I cannot wait to cook some complex carbohydrates in it. So I'll cook up some sweet potatoes and, have those ready to go. And I just thought, another great side of veggies and then a fat, like a healthy fat, is avocados. They go with everything, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I'm going to be fermenting my own sauerkraut today. I'm starting a lot of little house projects that I've been wanting to start for a while. And I'm just so excited to have simplified the idea that making breakfast, lunch, or dinner has to be complicated or out of a box. And it does not have to be any of those things. And I know, like right now, there's a lot of like, oh my goodness, eggs are so expensive and this is crazy. And I get it, but if you've been buying pasture-raised eggs for a while, and we actually didn't this time. We bought just regular white eggs from Costco because it was like, I don't even know how many trays of eggs for 15 bucks. And I need a lot of eggs this week because I'm making hard-boiled eggs. I'm going to be baking bread. There's a lot of things I'm going to be doing with the eggs, and I want it to be a little bit more cost effective. But if we can spend $4 to $6 on a coffee, I think we can trade it for a really good bunch of eggs. Would you agree? And having these options and really thinking of meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner like this: veggies, complex carbs. So if that's for you a sweet potato, or maybe it's a whole grain English muffin, or 7 seeds organic grain bread with peanut butter on it and an egg. So you're thinking you need a veggie, a complex carbohydrate, not white, not a white, flour, not uh, a bunch of processed food. You're aiming for highly nutritionally dense food and protein. It just makes thinking of food so much easier, and you can make it so unbelievably tasty. I'll give you an example. Last week, my favorite lunch was a spinach salad. So I did 2 cups of spinach, chopped up some onions, garlic. I had chickpeas in there. I had tomatoes. I had mint leaves. I had scoops of quinoa. I put salmon on it one day, tuna on it one day. I just used the protein that I had either from dinner or the night before. I threw some feta cheese on there. I made my own dressing with olive oil, Dijon mustard, and balsamic, just regular balsamic. Shook it up in a mason jar, poured that over the top. I don't track macros right now. I'm not doing that. I think there's a time and a place for sure. If that's what you like, I do find myself like I don't do recipes, so I find that really complicating and overcomplicating things. I do like to track my grams in protein though. So I have started doing that. And this has really helped when I'm aiming for 20 to 30 grams of protein for breakfast, 30 to 40 for lunch, 30 to 40 for dinner. And then I do have a couple of snacks throughout the day during this trimester. And I am also just really trying to pass some things down to my kids that they can remember and choose healthier options over easy options. And, you know, when you get used to something and you repeat something, kind of like reps, right? When you get used to something and you repeat it again and again, it becomes second nature. So instead of, grabbing a bag of pirate's booty for a snack, but you see a huge fruit salad with mint leaves and squeezed lemon juice, and and your mom doesn't buy it anymore, certain packaged snacks, you're gonna grab what's there because it's actually going to fill you up more. The flavors and the nutrition is going to be so much better. And, I was thinking, I think it was a couple weeks ago. I was like, what is wrong with me? Like I enjoy being a stay-at-home mom, even though I'm kind of like a go, go, go stay-at-home mom. And I want to eat healthy. I want to make a beautiful home. I want to have all these wonderful moments and be present with my kids. I want my husband to walk home into a place of peace, even if it's a little chaotic. And I was wondering, I'm like, why don't I like make any of these recipes? I must have saved hundreds, and I just feel uninspired. And I think it was because I had these expectations of what, the American wife, what our dream is of dinner and what it should be, when really the healthiest way that I could possibly eat and I could feed my family is focusing on real whole food and planning my proteins for the week. And like I said, for this week, I have a whole chicken, 2 packs of ground beef. Now, the whole chicken will be a dinner, a lunch, and a broth. And I might be jumping on my inside of the Facebook group to make this Instapot chicken, like kind of make the chicken with me type thing. I've never made it in the Instapot, so I'm going to attempt that today. It looks amazing, and I'm going to sear it first for a few minutes on both sides with some butter, and then I will be cooking it on high pressure. So, and then after that, I'll be using it for lunch. I'll peel it all off the bones. I'll save everything, and then I will make a bone broth with it and use it for either just drinking for like a healthy, nutritionally dense drink. My 5-year-old actually loves broth and will have her own little cup with a little bit of salt on top, and she loves it. And I love that we have started doing that. I love that my husband is able to hunt a couple times a year for our family. We have a freezer full of, I wouldn't say full of, but deer and some cow. And not that he hunted the cow, but the cow is a very happy cow. So we have some of that, and I'm trying to focus on, okay, what proteins can I do this week? And I guess the vein of being more cost effective, I want to start buying pasture raised chickens from the local farm here, and I'm going to be emailing them. I have a few questions because it is expensive. It is very expensive, and I was able to get an organic young pasture raised chicken from the Kroger grocery store that's next to us for half the price. So I opted for that this time around. We might make a few budget changes. I'm not sure because we do want to focus on healthy foods, healthy planning the proteins, but we also want to be wise. And I think we can do both. And then, maybe some weeks we can do some of the local farmers thing items that we love to get. I've been buying raw milk and using that for a lot of different things. And I think that we'll be able to do that, but the plan is to just focus on whole foods. And whether it comes from the Kroger up the street or, sometimes I get the bags of wild caught salmon from Costco, wherever it comes from, if it can fit in my budget, and if I need to let some other things go so I can make it fit in my budget so I can buy the fish, I will do that hands down every time. And then I love having on hand, I know what proteins are in my deep freezer in the garage. I move them into the 9 by 13 pan in the fridge. And then I say, okay, for this week, I have a whole chicken, 2 bags of ground beef. I have a chuck roast in the freezer still for later this week, which I'll probably, because it's pretty frozen. So I'll take it out of the deep freeze, and I'll probably take it out today or tomorrow, and I'll use that Thursday or Friday for a pot roast in the crock pot. And this is going to be used for lunch or dinners and lunch all week long. But as I said about veggies and eating the rainbow, I'm going to focus on those two things, veggies and fruit, along with grass-fed cheeses. I've got some from one of the local farms here in Georgia, and just cut those up. I'm going to be making, I know this sounds, this podcast is a little packed with things, but I am one of those people that I just love bread. And I, especially if it's a baked bread or it's like, I haven't had homemade bread in a while. I don't, because no one really makes it homemade. Like not even like Panera bread. They make it, yeah, they bake it, but they use a bunch of different things to make their bread. I'm talking like homemade from scratch bread, and I do buy loaves of organic 7 grain bread. But I am trading. I'm making a trade coming up here. I will be, and that would be a complex carb. So depending on the kind of bread, but I have really gotten into learning about sourdough and how it's a lot better for you. And actually, I don't know if you've ever read the blood type book, but it's better. Like if you're O blood, you can have like a 7 grain seed bread or sourdough. Those are the best options. And one of the reasons I've learned is that it ferments so long and it breaks down the grains that are in the bread. And I will keep you updated on how this goes. But because I love it so much and my kids do, I'm like, why am I buying like the organic bread I'm buying right now is like $7 a loaf, maybe more. And if I can just learn how to do it and make it from scratch and make it fermented bread like sourdough, we will be good to go. So that's my new endeavor, along with the sauerkraut, the fermenting my own cabbage and adding that to meals instead of taking a probiotic. So I think if you can take anything away from this episode, it's simplifying what you already know to be true. And we don't have to overcomplicate meals. We don't have to stretch our budgets so thin because we don't know what we need and we're buying this, this, and this, and this. If you can just focus, like for me, I'm like, okay, I want to do one poultry night, one seafood night, one beef night, and then like a big crock pot something and then have veggies and salad. That's pretty simple and quite cost effective, especially if you're shopping at, say, Aldi or Kroger or no offense to Publix. I love Publix. I don't know if that is where you are at, but they are quite expensive. So I do not get very much from there at all. But if you just focus on, 3 to 4 cuts of meat, and you can also, what I did a couple weeks ago is I kind of averaged how much protein my husband would like to eat per day for what he's doing, his health, and how much I need to eat during this trimester. Like I need to hit at least 90 grams a day, preferably 125. So I kind of added all that up, and I'll get the number, but it was something like it wasn't too crazy. It was like 100 and I think no, it wasn't 100 grams. It was like 32 pounds of protein per week. But if you have a whole chicken, a chuck roast, some other beef, it wasn't too bad. It was between like 25 and 35, something like that. That's in pounds, actually, 25 to 35 pounds of protein per week. And I'm not, and I would count in there, I counted like 2 dozen eggs for that too, to kind of make up for that. So it's really not too crazy. And we do eat protein a lot. So, and that's like a big focus for us. And I want my kids to be able to, whether they get it from meat, eggs, beans, fish, it doesn't matter. But I do try to get that on everyone's plate. So I wanted to, I think it's time I share with you. I needed permission to like hear that because I'm thinking, gosh, something's wrong with me. I don't want to make, I don't want to cook. Like I just want to make what I want to make. I don't want to be reading a recipe. Now it's different. I don't feel like this about baking. I feel like give me a recipe or otherwise this bread isn't going to rise coming up here soon. So it's different with baking, but I'm just like, why is it? And I felt uninspired. And then I was like, wait a second. I just need to focus on what's important, and that's the whole foods, the protein, the complex carbs, and the vegetables. And then if I have herbs, parsley, basil, anything, rosemary, salt, pepper, garlic salt, onion powder, like I can literally, olive oil and butter, make anything and make anything taste absolutely delicious. And it's real. It's not processed or fake or have a ton of different chemicals or vegetable oils that we shouldn't be eating anyways. So I hope this episode has inspired you and have been helpful. And this is your permission slip to just throw out the recipes. And I can't remember what I was reading, but I was led to I think her channel on YouTube is called Farmhouse on Boone, and it was her idea, the 9 by 13 pan in the fridge of, meat thawing out before she didn't even knew what she was going to do with it, from her channel. And it was a video she made like 5 or 6 years ago. But I think that what caught me to start watching her channel and start the title is, why, I don't meal prep, like meal prep without the meal prep, something like that, and why it works for her. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just think I found my best friend. And now listen, she is an incredible cook, an incredible homemaker, and she might even be like 5 years younger than me. I have no idea, but I'm truly inspired, and I wanted to share this with you because maybe you needed permission to throw everything out and just do the basics and make your own flavors. Use lemons, use garlic, use all kinds of real things that you can get from the store that are super cheap, and or the local farm stand or wherever you shop, and have those ready to go for the week. And that is what I am focusing on. And this is going to really be shaping my new weekly dinner system, my new weekly meal system. Maybe that's what I'll call this episode. I hope this has inspired you and challenged you to start prioritizing your health through your food and for your family. If this episode motivated, inspired, or challenged you, will you share with a friend? I would be so grateful if you could leave Reps and Redemption an Apple Podcast review. This is the only way I know you like the show. Please join the Facebook group for accountability and community. Link in the show notes. Be bold, mama, and live well. Until next time.